answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Consecutive night of U.S. strikes hit Iran overnight. According to CENTCOM military command centers, a variety of surveillance positions, missile and drone launching sites, along with other targets, were hit. The strikes do come after 3 U.S. service members were killed by an Iranian ballistic missile attack in Jordan on Friday. The U.S. military is still working to identify the remains of that 3rd soldier. A 4th soldier was killed in northern Iraq during a controlled detonation of an unexploded Iranian drone. President Trump reacted to the Iranian attacks, the U.S. strikes, and the deaths of these soldiers on Sunday.
They've got some missiles. They've got some drones. They've got some manufacturing ability, not much. We control the Strait. They don't control anything. So we'll see what happens. But we hit them very hard again tonight. And we did that in honor of the probably 3.
President Trump told Fox News last week that if Iran doesn't reach a deal, strikes will escalate this week to hit power plants and bridges. Iranian officials have indicated that some new proposals are being discussed.
A salute to those troops we lost over the weekend and those lost previously. At least 2 are known dead in the attack when Iran fired into Jordan. Another is missing. We have officially confirmed since Feb 28 of this year, 72 service members killed since the Iranian conflict began. And you have to keep in mind, Trump has tried every effort he can to have them simply talk it out, quit firing the missile, quit firing at our U.S. bases, and in fact firing at your Gulf neighbors. But Iran is doing what the hell it wants until they're absolutely, completely pushed into non-conditional surrender. Thanks for joining us, Larry Connors USA, July 20, 2026. And reminding you, when we're on the air, Monday through Friday, 6 to 8, we're bringing you news, analysis, opinion, and education. Every hour you leave with more information than you have when we began. Are you listening? Are you listening? You will leave with more information than when we began this hour. I promise you that. And reminding you, when we're on the air, we are streaming video right now. You can go to NewsTalkSTL Rumble, Larry Connors USA Rumble or Facebook, and you can watch the program. If you miss any part of any program, video or audio, you can pull it up as a podcast at NewsTalkSTL, LarryConnorsUSA.com, Larry Connors USA Facebook, or any platform you want. Simply search Larry Connors USA. In our next hour, a former Islamist sounds a warning, and he also is saying, "Is anyone listening?" And the New York City mayor is making a threat that if Netanyahu comes to his city, he will arrest him on charges defying Geneva Convention. Can he do that? We'll get into that in more detail coming up. Later this hour, John Daniel Davidson, senior editor of The Federalist. We are in the process of losing our culture. And in fact, I would say we're basically just giving it away the way we've been doing it lately. John Daniel Davidson joining us later. The story behind the story. Saturday marked the 1969 Chappaquiddick incident involving Senator Ted Kennedy leaving a party with Mary Jo Kopechne in his car, driving off a bridge that had no guardrails. Let's make sure you understand that. Crashing into a creek. He got out. She did not. That's our story behind the story. And also, I cannot pass this day without marking that today, 1969, Neil Armstrong was the first man to walk on the moon. Now back to the issue with Iran. Retired General Jack King on where we stand and where we need to be going.
Taking a restock of what's happened here. First of all, we went to a ceasefire on April the 7th after 39 days of military operations. And the reality was we went into a diplomatic phase that lasted almost 90 days. And out of that, we did get a signed document, the Memorandum of Understanding. And what was in there was one agreement and then 60 days of negotiations to get to the tough future agreements. But that one agreement was the Straits of Hormuz. And the president of Iran and the president of the United States both signed the agreement. We have said many times on this broadcast, you can't trust the Iranians. They lie about what they intend to do.
Yep.
And even if they sign a deal, they likely will not comply with it. But the fact is, even what they did this time, 3 or 4 days after signing the deal, they violated the deal with their president's signature on it by disrupting the Straits of Hormuz, when what they were supposed to do is make an announcement that the Straits of Hormuz is open, there's no restrictions being imposed on it whatsoever, there's no tolls, there's no insurance fees, nothing. It's international waterways, and none of that took place.
None of it. And when the Memorandum of Understanding was signed off, and Trump said this might be a way to open the door, it was immediately condemned by many, even in the right. And I told you then, I did not think it was a very solid deal. I didn't expect Iran to live up to it anyway. It was a first step. Do you understand? It's a first step. And obviously, we expected it to fail, and it did. And Iran was not going to get everything mentioned in the Memorandum of Understanding until they met certain phases of qualification. Well, they failed on that as well. Dan Hoffman, former CIA station chief.
When enemy forces strike our bases, the president turns to our intelligence community, not just the CIA, but military intelligence as well, NSA, overhead reconnaissance, for all the intelligence we have to determine where these strikes were launched from inside Iran that killed our soldiers. Who gave the orders to launch those strikes? Tactically, we need to know those things. And then strategically, what Iran hopes to accomplish by launching those strikes. For sure, from Iran's perspective, from the perspective of Iran's hardline IRGC-dominated regime, this is an existential fight. They want to reduce or eliminate altogether U.S. influence in the Middle East, and the Strait of Hormuz is the center of gravity for that fight. But Iran is launching strikes against our Gulf allies, particularly against U.S. bases. We saw that not just with these strikes that killed our service members, but with previous strikes as well. Iran wants to dominate the region, and the United States is going to have to respond. The president, I think, right now is probably taking in all of this information and then looking at an array of options to take the fight to Iran in a more escalatory way.
That is a key point, and I have no doubt he's doing that. They continue to hit our U.S. bases in the region, inside Arab Gulf nations, which means those nations are also taking hits from Iran, which they don't like. But President Trump is going to make sure there's a full payback for killing American troops. They were not exercising any direct attacks against Iran at that point. They were simply on their base, doing their job, their mission, to maintain stability and hopefully some peace in the region. And Iran decides we will target them as well. There's nothing new there. It's just that they're going to get a hell of a payback. And I hope every one of them involved gets to go to their future consortium of virgins, in my opinion, to hell. Once again, retired General Jack King.
We're doing what we couldn't get done diplomatically. We removed our blockade as part of the deal, but they maintain control. So now we're conducting the battle of the Straits of Hormuz to forcibly open the straits, secure it, and eventually control it. That is what has taken place, and huge progress is being made. And as we are taking casualties in doing this, casualties are a part of war, and our heart goes out to the loss of life here. And 3 losses of life has taken place, 1 non-combatant and potentially a 4th. Add that to the list of thousands, that the Iranians have killed Americans since 1983. And that's what we're dealing with in this barbaric regime. So this is going to still take some time to be able to achieve that objective the president has given to his military commanders. But that's the path we're on.
And it's a path that we're not going to cease. We will see it to conclusion. The Iranian regime will cease to exist at one point or another. Trump is doing everything he can to protect the Iranian people. But that regime, which is intent on killing anyone that they consider an infidel, which is if you do not conform to their way, their religion, you are an infidel. And they will continue their efforts to try to destroy Western civilization. And we've got right inside our nation right now, the Democrat Socialists of America. They call themselves, inside the Democrat Party, Democrat Socialists of America. They're now inside the mainstream, supposedly, Democrat Party. Democrat Senator Fetterman is calling them out.
You know, these DSA people are deeply anti-Israel, and they're deeply anti-America as well, too. And now look at the kinds of people that they've said. Look at the things that they've been forced to delete, what they've said online. And that's not ancient history thing. These are recent things that they've said and that they've done. And it's indefensible. And I don't know why other Democrats, we just can't collectively say they are not Democrats. They can run if they want, but not as a Democrat. You know, these are extremists, and usually they're incredibly anti-American and are willing to even wipe their mouths with the American flag.
Yeah, that's how disgusting they are. I know that's a First Amendment right we allow in this country. Can you imagine taking an ISIS flag and wiping your mouth with it? Do you imagine that they would just let that go and say, well, they're expressing their freedom of speech? There is no freedom of speech under these guys. And the DSA is actively pushing to overthrow the government from the inside. They clearly are. Listen to how Fetterman describes Bernie and AOC and what they're doing.
It's hilarious. You know, Bernie is there campaigning for this guy. You know, humble yourself, Bernie. You know, you just push an accused rapist and imploded up in Maine, and now you're pushing, essentially a pro-Hamas candidate that's been anti-American and deeply anti-Israel. You know, he's a socialist that earned $700,000 last year. His wife, in private practice, she refuses to accept Medicaid for that. I mean, you know, he's a phony, and he has said incredibly anti-American thing. And I would remind all the Democrats, he participated and he was very involved in the no commitment vote, you know, during the campaign, during when Harris was running for president, the uncommitted one, I guess the uncommitted, whatever the crazies were doing that year, you know, and now, he is running. And now I'd also like to point out that 44% of Muslims, they have positive views of Hamas. I mean, that's a legit poll. That's Pew. That's Pew. And now how do you campaign, and not just acknowledge that, El Sayed, he said that Israel is as evil as Hamas. So that's not my Democrat. That's not someone I could ever support. You know, these are the kind of candidates that Bernie keeps pushing.
He is talking about Abdul al-Sayed. He's running for Senate in Michigan. He does not have a medical license, although he's often been called a doctor. And he has in New York apparently claimed at one time to be a physician, according to Breitbart News. And then he said, I wasn't supposed to be a politician. I studied to be a doctor, but realized that it was our broken policies that was making people sick. So he never got his degree, apparently. He has called repeatedly to defund police, claimed Medicare for all would end white privilege in the healthcare system, and believes ICE is being used to terrorize people on the streets. And AOC, Democrat congresswoman who has already been accused by some, especially the Democrat socialists, as not being far left enough. She joined Bernie to basically throw her support behind al-Sayed in Michigan, claiming that he represents the politics of the future for America. Really? Yeah, really. That's what she thinks. In the meantime, Jack Altman is a former member of the Democrat Socialist of America, and he says the communists have already captured that group and other socialist groups, and they're getting by with it.
They basically removed the guardrails that they hadn't even been enforcing. So there was a provision that would have barred Leninists from membership in the organization. And the delegates at convention voted to remove that. So we're seeing, again, efforts to minimize this extremism in the DSA from some prominent DSA members. It's just not true. Their organization has been captured.
So it's fair to say that they openly embrace communists, right?
I think many people in DSA openly embrace communism. One of my real concerns is that we see a lot of resistance to anti-communism within the DSA, even from the moderate wing of the DSA. And I think this is very, very dangerous. It's not a harmless organization. These people seem perfectly willing to cohabitate with Maoists, with Trotskyists, with Leninists, with people who want to pull down American institutions and are very clear about it. People who have this thrill to violence that is just profoundly troubling at a time when our country is already facing many, many problems.
And you know we are. Now, that is, again, Jack Altman, a former member of the Democrat Socialist of America, and he's walked away from them. You heard him say they have factions inside the DSA itself, fighting against themselves to some extent, but overall they're willing to, as he said, willing to cohabitate with Maoists, Trotskyists, Leninists, I should say, all intent and with a purpose to dismantle American institutions. Get rid of the U.S. Senate, the Supreme Court, and all our federal agencies that they consider harmful to Americans. ICE, law enforcement, Border Patrol. I mentioned earlier, our culture is hanging in the balance. Well, coming up, Federalist senior editor John Daniel Davidson wrote a great piece on how we are losing American culture. That's coming up. And the story behind the story. Senator Kennedy and Chappaquiddick. Lock and load. Ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Another day must be another roofer in town. And John Beal and I were talking. He said, you know, every time you turn around, there's a new roofing company. Many of them have no idea what they're doing, and the statistics show that many will be out of business within 2 to 5 years. Who are you going to call to help you then? You need to remember only one name, John Beal. John Beal Roofing. You have a problem, he can take care of it. And we'll be here for you. John Beal Roofing. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. Spring weather has everyone sneezing, even inside their home or building. Instead of saying Gesundheit, call Wellington Environmental to perform air tests to determine if mold levels are too high. Gesundheit is the same as saying bless you after someone sneezes, the German word meaning wishing you good health. Wellington Environmental can perform air testing that is simple, fast, and can identify issues keeping you from having good health. Wellington does the same for hospitals and nursing homes for indoor concerns. Give them a call. It's simple. 314-644-4930. 644-4930. Tell Cindy, I need air sampling. They've seen it all. They can help you. Next time you hear Gesundheit, think Wellington. Wellington Environmental. Be well with Wellington. Every summer, homeowners make plans: a new grill, a backyard project, a family vacation. But what about the upgrades you could enjoy every single day? Your windows drafty, difficult to open? Your patio entry door has seen better days? Now's the time to make a change. Renewal by Anderson makes replacing windows and doors simple. Beautifully crafted products, professional installation. And right now, save big. Get $1,000 off your patio or entry door and take $400 off each replacement window. And if you schedule your appointment before July 12, get an additional $250 off your entire purchase. Call 877-WINDOWS or visit renewalbyanderson.com. 877-WINDOWS or visit renewalbyanderson.com. Renewal by Anderson. Superior products, exceptional service. It's that time of season when families, businesses are moving. For local or long distance, I endorse McGuire Moving. Get a date set soon before the schedules are booked. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. McGuire is constantly giving back to our veterans, such as Support Dogs for Our Brave. So with McGuire, you're getting excellent service and helping our vets. McGuireMoving.com.
This is News Talk STL. This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Welcome back. We're having trouble establishing communications with John Daniel Davidson, senior editor at the Federalist right now. By the way, he has a book out which I strongly encourage you to pick up. It's called Pagan America, The Decline of Christianity and the Dark Age to Come. And part of this article in the Federalist today deals with we are living through an era of cultural destruction. We all see it. We can call it out, but he's done a very good job about how they're doing it in sometimes almost imperceptible ways, I should say. But they're getting by with it because no one will put their foot down and say, you've gone too far. Back up. And he ties into some of the things, reference the new movie, Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. He said there have been a lot of positive reviews, but he said the film is not primarily an act of cultural transmission or retelling an ancient epic, but of cultural destruction. He said a writer for the Washington Post, Spencer Klavan, called it, quote, a gorgeous rendition of a story that never gets old. But he also noted that Klavan even noted that some of the thematic changes depart dramatically from Homer and his writing of the Odyssey. Klavan writes, it is racked with remorse over his role in the Trojan War, whereas Homer's story is more about the savage but righteous fury of the warrior who must tame the anger and reintegrate himself into domestic life. It's very much where we are now, isn't it? We're having in the midst of our population those who clearly cry out against America and denounce it. It's their first freedom of expression right. We accept that. But here's what happens the more you allow yourself to be courteous and acceptable and standing on the Constitution. I'm not suggesting we shut down First Amendment. I'd be against that. But we've got to recognize the dangers that come with it. In the past, no one would dare use it as a weapon against us. Now, it is a consistent weapon against us. And not only in this nation, but around the world. And where they can get away with it, they do. John Daniel Davidson points out in his article, and we're still trying to establish contact, but I don't know if we'll get him in time now to have any interview time with him. But he says the issue that we look at, not only the Odyssey, and how it's got reframed to fit today's culture to some extent. He said there's you might say nothing problematic, I should say, in the books and nothing to reckon with. People will use language like they want when they want to destroy a work of literature and wear it like a skin suit, as he said. Everyone who consumes pop culture in the 21st century recognizes this for what it is. Nearly every beloved myth or story from Western culture has been, quote, reimagined. And we all know that. And then foisted on us as a piece of liberal propaganda. You want a perfect example? AOC declaring the other day, we cannot go back to the days of Jim Crow. We need to get rid of the Senate. We're not in the days of Jim Crow. And as she paid attention to history, the Democrats created Jim Crow, and the Senate was not even in place with the civil, at that time, regarding civil rights under the Senate and Jim Crow. And Davidson points out that earlier this month, the Washington Post reported a Boston firm had been selected to create a monument to racial diversity in Charlottesville. Remember Charlottesville, where Trump supposedly endorsed Nazis? He did not. He said there are some fine people there. And they were talking about those who gathered. He said fine people on both sides. Those who were there protesting removing a Confederate statue. Each should have a right to make their expression. But unfortunately, you got agitators, organized agitators, and thugs coming in on both sides. On the far left, you got all of those coming forward. And on the right, you had the stormtroopers, whose streets, our streets, carrying torches like they were in Nazi Germany. But the very fact that Trump said there were some good people on both sides got lost in the argument. In fact, there was no argument. It simply got plastered over and presented as a fact that Trump was accepting these people carrying torches through Charlottesville, claiming whose streets, our streets. In other words, no place for minorities. So now they're looking at creating a monument to racial diversity in Charlottesville using bronze from the now melted down statue of Robert E. Lee. Said again, that is an iconic Lee statue that was removed from the City Market Street Park in 2021. It had been in that park for more than a century before the city council voted to recognize it, to remove it as early as 2017. Then you had the removal with the Help the Unite Right rally later that year. There was a clash. And yes, there was a young woman who was killed when a car driven by a protester plowed into the crowd. And of course, then began more pushes to pull down statues and monuments all over. Not just the statues of Confederates, but our founding fathers, Catholic saints, every conceivable figure from our nation's past. And as John Daniel Davidson points out in his article in The Federalist, it wasn't enough to destroy these images, because the point was not simply to remove them from public spaces, but to show complete cultural domination. To show complete cultural domination over those who wish to preserve them. And he added, to forecast what would be done to anyone who resisted. He said images of the Lee statue face bright orange and melting, disseminated everywhere. Their purpose wasn't just to demoralize anyone who objected to the destruction, but to suggest that resistance is futile, that this history is being wiped out. There is no future in America for those who are not on board. And yet, it is part of our history. Robert E. Lee was a Confederate general. He led the Confederate troops. We had half of our nation divided at that time. Sometimes Not just family against family, but brother against brother. It's a tarnished stain on our nation's history. We've accepted that fact, and we tried to move past it. They would have no problem, I guess, on building anything that supported Democrat socialist candidates running under the Lenin-Trotsky banner, would they? They are trying to rewrite history. You cannot do that. You can learn from it, but you can't rewrite it. And I will never forget when they were after a statue, the Christopher Columbus statue in Chicago on the South Side, and wanting to pull it down. And I would never forget the words of an elderly black man who lived near that statue. And his words, and I'm paraphrasing, "That statue's never done a damn thing to me. It hasn't harmed me in any way." He recognized it for what it was, a marker on a past history. It doesn't say we're that way now, but it reminds you what you are, how far you've come from that point. But John Daniel Davidson continues that the ancient Romans called this basically the condemnation of memory, a political tool employed when there was a change of the emperor. The previous destroyed, it will not be remembered. The same thing happened in Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia. Re-indoctrination camps and teaching the young people only what they want them to learn so they would not know their history. I've not seen a history book in a high school class in decades. I have no idea what they have in there now. But I know it should be considered probably lacking a lot of factual history. Coming up, our story behind the story. And again, this is a part of history that some of you might not be familiar with, or you've only known parts of it. We're going to try to give you a full overlook. The story behind the story of Senator Ted Kennedy and Mary Jo Kopechne and the Chappaquiddick incident. Still to come.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
I want to share something with you. Cooking a pizza using coal creates an amazing pizza. Only one place to get it, Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield. Of course, they offer a wide variety of pasta, but you just visit the website NapoliSTL.com, dine in or take out, and get ready for patio season. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield Valley. Try it. You can thank me later. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check Vincent'sJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Every summer, homeowners make plans: a new grill, a backyard project, a family vacation. But what about the upgrades you could enjoy every single day? Your windows drafty, difficult to open? Your patio entry door has seen better days? Now's the time to make a change. Renewal by Anderson makes replacing windows and doors simple. Beautifully crafted products, professional installation. And right now, save big. Get $1,000 off your patio or entry door and take $400 off each replacement window. And if you schedule your appointment before July 12, get an additional $250 off your entire purchase. Call 877-WINDOWS or visit renewalbyanderson.com. 877-WINDOWS or visit renewalbyanderson.com. Renewal by Anderson. Superior products, exceptional service. When insurance companies know you're represented by Onder Law, they know Onder is not going to let you be pushed around. Their reputation is built on years of courtroom battles. If you suffer an injury or damage to your property, serve the insurance company notice. You have Onder Law on your side, a St. Louis firm you can trust to protect you at every term. Don't settle for less. You want to win? Believe me, Onder wins. Onder, O-N-D-R, underlaw.com.
This is News Talk STL.
And it's bad, Leroy Brown, the baddest man in the whole damn town. Better than old King Kong, meaner than a jump.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA. Now, Larry Connors with the story behind the story.
At midnight last Friday, Senator Edward M. Kennedy drove a car off a narrow bridge and into a pond on Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. A young woman in the car with him was drowned. Kennedy survived but failed to report the accident until 10 hours later. Today, police moved to prosecute the senator on a charge of leaving the scene of an accident after causing bodily harm. ABC's Mal Good reports from Edgartown, Massachusetts.
At 9:30 in front of the Dukes County Courthouse, Chief of Police Dominic Arena faced newsmen and a crowd estimated at 400 townspeople and vacationers. Filing a complaint with the county clerk, Arena charged the senator with leaving the scene of an accident after having done bodily harm.
My investigation is completed. Mr. Steele and I will be prepared to go into the hearing, and we'll just present our facts, and then if the complaint is issued, then a summons will be issued for the senator, and then we have to go to court.
The senator will not be required to be present when a formal hearing is held next Monday. He will be represented by local attorney Richard McCarran and longtime friend and advisor of the Kennedy family, Burke Marshall. Mal Good, ABC News, Edgartown, Massachusetts.
That was the ABC News report on July 21, 1969. The car had gone into the river on the bridge crossing from Chappaquiddick sometime after midnight on the 18th or early morning hours of the 19th. And Senator Kennedy got out of the car, later claimed that he dove repeatedly into the water trying to see if she might still be alive and get her out, but he just couldn't. And then he walked by several homes going back to the party house where they'd left. Now, when I say party house, that might suggest that they were all drinking and going crazy. I don't know what they were doing. I do know this, and I'll point it out in more detail later. There was never an autopsy on Mary Jo Kopechne, but there was a blood sample taken from her that indicated what some called, well, that might be moderate drinking, but it would indicate maybe she had had up to 5 cocktails for her weight up to an hour before she died. But did she drown or suffocate? We'll come back to that later. But again, that happened on the midnight of July 18 or early morning July 19, 1969. July 25, Kennedy went to the airwaves with a statement.
It was an early summer morning in 1969. Fishermen on Chappaquiddick, a small island off Martha's Vineyard, spotted a black Oldsmobile in the water. The local police chief was first on the scene.
When I got there, I saw a car in the water upside down. And I don't know why I did this, but I went to the cottage, which was right next door, and I asked the lady, you wouldn't happen to have a bathing suit, would you?
Chief Arena swam out to the car, but the tide was too strong for an underwater search. He sat on top of the car while the license plate was called into the station. It came back as registered to Senator Edward M. Kennedy.
Sitting on the car, I thought, that inner feeling, and you can describe it whatever you want. I'm convinced there's somebody in there.
A scuba diver arrived on the scene, dove down, and saw a body floating in the vehicle.
He had a rope, and he said, when you feel a tug, you pull, and I'm coming up. So next thing you know, up he comes with this blonde girl, young lady. And as I looked at her, I was trying to figure out which Kennedy is she.
The woman was 28-year-old Mary Jo Kopechne.
And the diver said he found the body in the well of the back seat of the car, where there was an air pocket. Rigor mortis was apparent, hands clasping the back seat, her face turned upward like maybe she was trying to get the last of the air that she could. Then, of course, the question is, she was still alive trying to get out of the car. As I said, that happening either after the midnight of July 18 or just before, or early morning hours of July 19. But it would be days later, July 25, when Kennedy would issue a first public statement.
My fellow citizens, I have requested this opportunity to talk to the people of Massachusetts about the tragedy which happened last Friday evening. This morning I entered a plea of guilty to the charge of leaving the scene of an accident. Prior to my appearance in court, it would have been proper for me to comment on these matters. But tonight I am free to tell you what happened and to say what it means to me.
That was the beginning of a statement which was being broadcast and picked up by every network. The Kennedy family, icons, Kennedy obviously looking to be a future president. And then you describe more of what happened after the party.
When I left the party around 11:15 p.m., I was accompanied by one of these girls, Miss Mary Jo Kopechne. Mary Jo was one of the most devoted members of the staff of Senator Robert Kennedy. She worked for him for 4 years and was broken up over his death. For this reason, and because she was such a gentle, kind, and idealistic person, all of us tried to help her feel that she still had a home with the Kennedy family. There is no truth whatever, to the widely circulated suspicions of immoral conduct that have been leveled at my behavior and hers regarding that evening. There has never been a private relationship between us of any kind. I know of nothing in Mary Jo's conduct on that or any other occasion. And the same is true of the other girls at that party that would lend any substance to such ugly speculation about their character. Nor was I driving under the influence of liquor.
But again, he was not tested. He did not report the incident for hours. And he did end up entering a guilty plea.
Today, as I mentioned, I felt morally obligated to plead guilty to the charge of leaving the scene of an accident. No words on my part can possibly express the terrible pain and suffering I feel over this tragic incident. This last week has been an agonizing one for me and for the members of my family. And the grief we feel over the loss of a wonderful friend will remain with us the rest of our lives.
The medical examiner was off that night. The assistant medical examiner was called in, and he ruled death by drowning. Mary Jo was buried July 22nd. No autopsy. But a prosecutor wanted to exhume the body. The parents were against it. So, yes, there is more to the story behind the story.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Do you know why I endorse Cafe Napoli, all the locations? Visit any of them, and you will quickly appreciate the quality of food, service, atmosphere. So maybe I'll see you at Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli Kirkwood, Napoli 2 in Town and Country, Napoli 3 in St. Charles, right next door to Napoli C. Or maybe you'll find me at Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the Chesterfield Valley. Now you know why I endorse Napoli, NapoliSTL.com.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA. Now, the end of the story behind the story.
I regard as indefensible the fact that I did not report the accident to the police immediately. Instead of looking directly for a telephone after lying exhausted in the grass for an undetermined time, I walked back to the cottage where the party was being held and requested the help of two friends, my cousin Joseph Gargan and Paul Markham, and directed them to return immediately to the scene with me. This was sometime after midnight, in order to undertake a new effort to dive down and locate Miss Kopechne. Their strenuous efforts, undertaken at some risk to their own lives, also proved futile. All kinds of scrambled thoughts, all of them confused, some of them irrational, many of them which I cannot recall, and some of which I would not have seriously entertained under normal circumstances, went through my mind during this period. They were reflected in the various inexplicable, inconsistent, and inconclusive things I said and did, including such questions as whether the girl might still be alive somewhere out of that immediate area, whether some awful curse did actually hang over all the Kennedys.
Yeah, there was a question about the curse over the Kennedys. But when the effort was made by the prosecutor to exhume Mary Jo's body to determine did she die by drowning or by suffocation, simply running out of oxygen, an autopsy could determine that. But her family did not want her grave disturbed. After an inquest hearing, the judge ruled in favor of the family's decision not to exhume their body. The parents were the best they could be, elated, but also still saddened.
This means that I'll come up here very, very often to visit my daughter. I couldn't have faced coming back and going up to the cemetery. And I honestly mean this, I could never have gone up to that cemetery again if I'd known it had been disturbed. I'll be back.
Mr. Kopechne, do you feel now that this ruling justifies the statement made by Senator Kennedy regarding the accident?
Well, I feel our position has been vindicated, and I feel that Dr. Mills' examination now to me, as always did prove conclusive.
Are you satisfied with the Senator's explanation?
Well, yes.
Mrs. Kopechne?
Yes.
I think primarily what is involved here is this. It's always been my client's positions from the beginning of this matter that an autopsy was unwarranted under the facts as they knew them. I think that the hearing bore this out, and at the hearing, all of the facts as we knew them were presented. Based on those facts, the judge has made a ruling that no autopsy ought to be held. And this has been basically the position that the Kopechne family has taken from the beginning. So their position has been vindicated by the court's decision.
Kennedy's wife at the time, Joan, was pregnant and not at that event at Chappaquiddick. But she continued to stand beside her husband in court. Then you heard some of the testimony that Kennedy read from a prepared statement. Again, the diver who recovered Mary Jo Kopechne's body believed that she had died from suffocation, as he had stated in the inquest in front of the judge again. Said basically, I think she did not drown. She died because she did not have enough air. Kennedy turned to the voters, asking, what do you want me to do?
And so I ask you tonight, the people of Massachusetts, to think this through with me. In facing this decision, I seek your advice and opinion. In making it, I seek your prayers. For this is a decision that I will have finally to make on my own. It has been written, a man does what he must, in spite of personal consequences, in spite of obstacles and dangers and pressures, and that is the basis of all human morality. Whatever may be the sacrifices he faces, if he follows his conscience, the loss of his friends, his fortune, his contentment, even the esteem of his fellow man. Each man must decide for himself the course he will follow.
The course he was going to follow, he was looking at being a run for the presidency in 72 and, of course, again in 76. But this had happened now in 69, just 3 years before the election. So he steps aside from running for the office. And the testimony of the diver is haunting still, saying it looked as she were holding herself up to get a last breath of air. He said, if I could have gotten there within 25 minutes, I could have gotten her out, but no one called. And again, the accident was not reported until many hours later. Senator Kennedy passed away August of 2009, following a battle with brain cancer at age 77. But the Chappaquiddick incident and what happened or did not happen live on. The story behind the story tomorrow, this month, 2018, a disaster at Table Rock Lake on a tourist boat, a duck boat. 17 died. Remember our pledge, one nation under God.
You can hear podcasts of this program at Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook.
John Bill Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call the John Bill to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Bill has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Bill. There's only one place you can get pizza cooked over coals, Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield Valley. Of course, Napoli Brothers has a great selection of pasta dishes. Between the pizza and pasta, trust me, you will not leave hungry. Then, a few doors down, Lit Cigar Lounge, a wide variety of quality cigars, each offering a unique smoke. That cigar, some premium whiskey, all you need to do is enjoy. Lit Cigar Lounge and Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta, Chesterfield Valley. It's that time of season when families, businesses are moving. For local or long distance, I endorse McGuire Moving. Get a date set soon before the schedules are booked. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. McGuire is constantly giving back to our veterans, such as Support Dogs for Our Brave. So with McGuire, you're getting excellent service and helping our vets. McGuireMoving.com. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check Vincent'sJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Let's be candid, honest. No out-of-state law firm can represent you better than Onder Law, O-N-D-E-R. Hometown roots, attorneys living right here with you and your family. When you suffer an injury because someone else was negligent, Onder Law will make sure the other party takes full responsibility. You'll get full compensation, not a backroom deal worked out with some insurance companies. And, of course, we're moving into the stormy season. And, again, when you have a legitimate claim, you should be properly compensated. Onder Law does not toy around with adjusters, investigators, lawyers trained to cheat you of what is rightfully yours. Onder Law has already recovered millions for families across Missouri and Illinois. Onder wins. Not just a catchy phrase, it's a fact. So I'll repeat it. Onder wins. OnderLaw.com. O-N-D-E-R. OnderLaw.com. Wins.
This is News Talk STL.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
There is no such thing as a term called Islamophobia. It's a term that they came up with to use against the people in the West. And you guys in the West have one thing that you think we envy you guys on, but we totally don't, which is called freedom of speech or democracy. We have that. It's just that we have so many regulations or rules that make it that make you want to present your ideas respectfully. We always criticize respectfully, but one thing the West has is the total chaos of freedom of speech because this is a safe haven for the radical extremists.
Wow, did he put that direct? He said you have created a safe haven for terrorists because you have the First Amendment, freedom of speech, which allows them to say what they want, do what they want, and you cannot do anything about it. Now, we've always looked at the First Amendment is vital to our nation, and I still say it is. But we know it can be abused. Freedom of speech to burn the U.S. flag. Freedom of speech to basically call out for killing the president. Not exactly. You could reach a point there where now you stepped over the line. But nothing was done to Chuck Schumer when he stood on the steps, I should say, of the Supreme Court after the court had overturned Roe v. Wade and shouted out to the Chief Justice and others, "You will rue the day that you did this." In other words, a threat. And then later Kavanaugh himself was targeted as a physical threat against him and his family. But this Islamist, former Islamist, pointing out, you have created the void that we operate in. You have created, by your First Amendment, the chaos that we thrive in. This double-edged sword has been here forever. Unfortunately, right now, we're having those who want to destroy our nation using our own Constitution and the protections we want to grant Americans, talking about legal Americans, or at least those who have become American through proper process, to destroy the very nation that we have. What's the balance? How do you reach the balance? I want freedom of speech. I want freedom of press. I want freedom of religion. But when you have an enemy that's going to take the very freedoms that you present and use it against you on a consistent, persistent basis. What can you do? What should you do? We're going to get into that in more detail. Welcome to hour number 2, Larry Connors USA, July 20, 2026. And reminding you, when we're on the air, we are streaming video. You can watch the program right now. You go to NewsTalkSTL, Rumble, Facebook, or Twitter. Larry Connors USA, Rumble, or Facebook. And everything goes up as a podcast later, in case you miss anything. Like in the last hour, our story behind the story was Chappaquiddick and Senator Kennedy, and how that incident ruined his chances forever becoming president. If you missed that, you can pull up the podcast. And when you do, please share it with others. Every day at the end of the 6 o'clock hour, we have a story behind the story. And I promoted last hour what we have for tomorrow. You didn't hear that either? You need to pull up the program. We bring you news, analysis, commentary, and education with each and every edition of Larry Connors USA. Later in this hour, a mother of a 12-year-old being told she cannot have access to her child's medical records because he's 12 years old. You as a parent, don't you think you should be able to see what's with your child and their medical records? You take them to the pediatrician, you drive them there. Are you not allowed to know what's going on with them? Well, in California, no, they're not going to let you do that. They're going to rely upon HIPAA rules saying we cannot divulge it. You don't want to miss that. Still to come in this hour. Now, back to the remarks by the former Islamist, saying, we have been thriving by labeling you Islamophobia, that you're frightened of us and you're scared, and so therefore you are trying to condemn all Muslims. I don't want to condemn all Muslims. I only want to condemn Islamists who want to take over our nation and destroy it from inside. If there were a faction of Jews or Christians or any other religion wanting to destroy our nation, yes, I would be against them. And so would you. But one Islamic activist says, we know what we need to do, and we're in the process of getting what we need to do what we need to do.
This is the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. This is, quote unquote, America's birthday. And the question historically is going to be, what were we doing on the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence? Do we have the audacity to sit around and say that we want to build a document that is our values and our principles and bring millions of Americans around it? And so I see people on the streets. I see mutual aid efforts. I see young people running for office. I see people of color, marginalized people getting up and saying, I'm the leader that I've been waiting for, and seeing people rally around those leaders. And so don't give up hope, folks. There's more to come. We're going to survive this. And some of us are going to be on the fight back, and some of us are going to be on the other side waiting to catch you when we win, because there got to be other people that are going to be building the thing that you're going to come to once we win this fight back, because we will win, my friend. So keep your chin up, your head up. It is the blessed month of Ramadan right now, so I've had a lot of time to reflect on this.
So there you have an Islamist saying that we are going to win. We are going to win in America. We will be successful. And we will, in fact, change America. We saw what happened in New York City with Mondami stepping up and giving his support to congressional candidates that are members of the DSA, Democrat Socialist of America, and also a couple of them Islamist. Now the New York Mayor Mondami says, I am in active conversation with our city's law department. Do I have the authority to arrest Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu when he arrives in September for a UN General Assembly? Mondami said, I believe the prime minister belongs in The Hague. He is a war criminal and who has been charged by the International Criminal Court, which is a fact. They did do that. And he said, what you will find is an opinion that is held by many purely because of what his actions have wrought over these last many years. Mondami celebrates what Hamas did in Jerusalem, in Israel, I should say. And he's endorsing pro-Hamas candidates and Islamists. Well, Benjamin Netanyahu was on an interview program with a fellow Jew, and they were discussing the possibility that if he came to New York City, he might well be arrested by New York City police. Listen to the conversation.
I hate Mamdani, and he has threatened to arrest you time and time again, which we know he really can't do. But he seems pretty steadfast on arresting you when you get here. I know you're going to come speak at the UN in September. I know you have a trip coming to D.C., but are you nervous that he may try that when you get here in September?
No, I'm not. I think you should look at who he's condemning, who he's praising. He's condemning Israel, the one democracy that stands shoulder to shoulder with American values, fights, our soldiers fight shoulder to shoulder with America's valiant soldiers. But, you know, who does he champion? Hamas, that calls openly to massacre every Jew on earth, that conducted that horrible massacre, the worst massacres on Jews since the Holocaust. He basically apologizes and excuses for Iran, the greatest terror regime on earth, that openly calls for the murder of President Trump and other senior officials, and so on. So he's with the terror actors. And I think the problem is, you know, that he doesn't recognize or he doesn't care that those who hate the Jews and Israel ultimately hate America. And in fact, I think secretly he hates America.
I'm not even sure it's secretly anymore.
No, he's not making a secret of it. He's making it very clear that's what he wants to do. And of course, he's got his supporters. Anti-Semitism has been given a birth in this country and fueled up again by anti-Semitic rage and by Muslim Islamists populating our nation, some coming in legally and then being radicalized or were already radicalized but got under the radar. Others coming in through the open border policy of Joe Biden. Thank you, Joe Biden. But at this point, we know what the intent is. Now, I want you to hear a report from Christian Broadcast Network about genocide being carried out not against Jews, but against Christians.
Some are calling it genocide. From Kenya to Syria to Pakistan, Muslim fanatics are slaughtering Christians. While Western governments have been slow to respond, activists are answering the call. Eric Stakelbeck recently spoke to a nun who's on a dangerous mission to help persecuted Christians.
The Islamic terror group ISIS is leaving a trail of destruction across large parts of Syria and Iraq, with a specific target in its crosshairs.
Hundreds of thousands of Christians have been displaced from their homes, and countless others have been murdered or enslaved by the jihadist armies of ISIS, with no end in sight.
Sister Hatun Dogan has been on the ground and witnessed the devastation of these ancient Christian communities. She's listened to survivors tell how Christian and Yazidi women are being sold into sex slavery.
They choose the most beautiful one, even if they have small child, and they sell these girls, these ladies, to each other. They don't sell to another religion, only to Sunni Muslim. They think there are 12,000 kidnapped in the hand of the ISIS Yazidi alone. What is going on there, what I was hearing, is the highest barbarism on the earth in the history till today. ISIS is Islam, Islam is ISIS.
That's as clear as you can make it. Islam is ISIS, ISIS is Islam. And we know what they've threatened and what they have carried out. They want a caliphate. They want to have a world where only ISIS rules. And we have freedom of religion in this country, freedom of expression, But as you heard in the beginning, a former Islamist saying, what you created creates a chaos where we can operate. And they are. In the meantime, the effort to round up illegals, then a lot of concern about our ICE agents acting properly. Well, Border Czar Holman says we're now going to start putting police officer cameras with ICE agents.
Yeah, I think body cameras are the way to go. I think body cameras let the American people know what that officer sees when he takes that action.
When will everyone get one?
You can have a cell phone camera from a witness on the side. You can have, city cameras or whatever. But I want the American people to see what that officer sees when he makes when he makes the decision, takes an action. Yeah. I think the American people need to see what that officer sees and hears. I think it's important. Yeah. And if you look at the data, body cameras actually exonerate agents more than they, provide evidence of wrongdoing.
Yeah, they do. And I cannot justify every ICE shooting, but from different videos, I'd say the ICE agent acted properly. But I don't have all the evidence, and neither do you, until everything's presented to you. ICE agents wearing body cameras, I think it's a good way to get away from some of the allegations and things that are being pushed around on a constant basis. Well, the World Cup is wrapped up, and all of those who came to the U.S. were absolutely impressed with our nation. And they're going back and singing our praises, no doubt. But you have to keep in mind how much security was needed to make sure it was pulled off safely, especially the events held in the USA. Late yesterday, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, said F-16s intercepted numerous aircraft violating flight restrictions over New Jersey, where they were carrying out the World Cup final. More than 10 general aviation aircraft entered this restricted airspace. And during two of the intercepts, NORAD aircraft dispensed flares to get the pilot's attention. Could have been seen from the ground wondering what's going on. NORAD said the flares were deployed with the highest regard for safety, I should say. They burn out quickly, completely, no danger to those on the ground. Why were these planes going into restricted airspace? If you're a pilot, you always check for what they call NOTAMs, notice to airmen, of any changes at an airport or a flight path you're planning or an area that is suddenly under restriction, as it was over the game yesterday. These pilots, while they might not have intended anything, it was purely accidental, they will be facing additional questioning and possibly marks against their license, if not revocation. And in the meantime, the FBI says we've seized more than 400 unauthorized drones across the 11 U.S. host cities, I should say. And 4 are now facing federal charges. They were flying drones into restricted areas around the various World Cup events. One case, Houston field office sent a blunt warning to anyone thinking about launching a drone near a World Cup match, saying you don't want to be federally charged? Do not fly in a no-drone zone. 400 drones seized from restricted airspace across the 11 cities hosting the World Cup. Were they all intent to cause havoc, harm? We don't know. Were they just hobbyists fooling around? We don't know. But we do know the FBI says 4 of them now face federal charges. You don't want to miss what we've got coming up next. Lock and load, ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Spring weather has everyone sneezing, even inside their home or building. Instead of saying Gazoon's height, call Wellington Environmental. to perform air tests to determine if mold levels are too high. Gesundheit is the same as saying bless you after someone sneezes, the German word meaning wishing you good health. Wellington Environmental can perform air testing that is simple, fast, and can identify issues keeping you from having good health. Wellington does the same for hospitals and nursing homes for indoor concerns. Give them a call. It's simple. 314-644-4930. 644-4930. Tell Cindy, I need air sampling. They've seen it all. They can help you. Next time you hear Gesundheit, think Wellington. Wellington Environmental. Be well with Wellington. McGuire Moving is silver certified, which means they are great at relocating senior citizens. In fact, McGuire is a household name because McGuire understands the stress involved when moving older adults. So if you or family members need help moving, I highly recommend McGuire Moving. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. Get a free in-home estimate. McGuireMoving.com. John Bill Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call the John Bill to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Bill has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Bill. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check Vincent'sJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Vincent'sJewelers.com.
This is News Talk STL.
I guess I grew up on an older road, a pedal to the metal, always did what I was told, until I found out that my brand new clothes came secondhand from the rich kids next door. And I grew up fast, I guess I grew up mean. There's 1,000 things inside my head I wish I ain't seen, and now I just wander through a real bad dream, or feeling like I'm coming apart at the seams. But thank you, Jack Daniels, oh, number 7, Tennessee whiskey got me drinking in heaven. And
this is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
When we start talking about can we ensure that the midterm elections are going to be secure? Yes, we absolutely can build confidence in the American people, but the states have to do their part. I will tell you, if the states that choose not to participate with the SAVE program and they choose not to participate in securing the elections, we will make sure that we make those states a priority to look at who voted in their states and hold then the election officials accountable. If the election officials, once we gave them the information they need to secure their elections and they chose not to, then those individuals can also be held accountable by fines, by penalties, and even, depending on how far it goes, prison time.
Yeah, I would like to see that. I would like to see some true payback and accountability. And there you have our Secretary, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen talking about we're going to make sure we have election integrity. And we've made it very clear to these states, here's what you need to be doing to make sure no illegals are voting in federal elections. And the voter ID thing, they continue, it is amazing to me. I should correct that. Nothing the left does amazes me anymore, but it just upsets me to no end that they continue to say, oh, well, having to show an ID, that's just too onerous. It's not. they use it again as a catch to just say that, well, we're being disenfranchised if we have to show a voter ID. You are being disenfranchised if someone is voting and they don't have proper identification. They're voting, stealing your vote, or reversing your vote. This is back to when you've got so many on the left calling out to defund the police, no more police patrols. You know who gets hurt the most? The minority groups. Chris Arps was on the program with me last week, and he was talking about black-on-black crime still ranks among the highest of the crimes. And I've done reports over the decades about black-on-black crime, and even to the extent one mother telling me that she does not even let her kids sleep in their bed at night, makes them sleep on the floor because of drive-by shootings, and that they consider the gunfire at night to be the nighttime lullaby. That's frightening. That mother and her children had no way to get out of the neighborhood. And when you pull police away from that neighborhood, you're going to increase gang activity and criminal activity of any type. And the innocents are the ones who will end up suffering. Right now, there is a woman by the name of Christian Maxwell. She is a conservative businesswoman, marketing strategist. She is a mother of four, congressional candidate in Illinois for the Congressional District number 1 in Illinois. That includes South Chicago, goes all the way down to Joliet. She's a graduate at the University of Illinois, Chicago. She is also a homeschooling mother. She says, I understand the challenges families face when it comes to education, safety, affordability, and opportunity. She said, my life and work have been shaped by deep commitment to faith, family, and the belief that the government should serve the people, not special interest. This woman, I want to tell you this now, but it has nothing really to do with the values I went through. But it puts a shade of color in. She is a black woman. She is a Republican running in the Illinois 1st Congressional District. She said she's running because she believes Illinois families deserve a fighter. And she is absolutely against all the illegals that have gotten into our nation.
I'm a Republican in Illinois, and I often find myself wondering what's going through the heads of the leadership of the Illinois Republican Party. One big thing that has been on my mind is why are we so confused about how to counteract what the Democratic establishment is doing as far as trying to shelter the voters they know should not be voting in the state? So the big issue that Illinois has is that they will not release their voter rolls because we know for a fact there are going to be a great deal of people on the voter rolls who should not be there, whether it is deceased individuals who are still on the voter roll, having mail-in ballots cast, or if it's illegal aliens, people who should not actually be voting, but were accidentally registered via the DMV, because you can automatically register to vote when you get a license in Illinois. So whatever the issue is, we know that they are sheltering the voter rolls in Illinois. This is a focused effort from Pritzker. So right now, the Illinois Republican Party, we do see them advocating for the SAVE Act, and they want to see voter ID happen at the polls. This should happen. We shouldn't walk in to vote and there's no ID that's requested.
Again, her name is Christian Maxwell, running in the 1st Congressional District of Illinois, covering mostly South Chicago and all the way down to Joliet. What are her chances? I haven't looked at any polling, but I love her attitude and her approach. And I hope the people of the 1st District recognize that. I fear they won't. And, of course, the other day when President Trump was addressing the nation, some of the networks refused to carry his address live. You know why? Because they say, well, he always lies. He says things we can't double-check fast enough. So we will put it on our live stream rather than our network so they can say we are doing something. Well, you're not doing anything because you know if it's not on your live programming, how many people are going to watch on the stream? and you're fabricating a reason not to do it. Political Democrat analyst and activist and propagandist James Carville, who got Bill Clinton into the White House, on one hand speaks out against those networks not carrying the president, and then he goes off the deep end. James Carville. And he absolutely said they should have carried the speeches. He said they should have let everyone see the speeches. Why? Well, because in his mind, because Trump was crazy, showing crazy. They give and they take. There's always a little something else to be taken from you. Gavin Newsom, of course, has his sights set on the White House. His wife, Jennifer, was being questioned about some of the allegations against Newsom. He has not been criminally charged with any crimes, but there have been a lot of prosecutions of secured guilty pleas from several of his top associates. So his wife, Jennifer, was being questioned about these allegations and how that would play into the election.
But is it true that this investigation started during the Biden administration?
I don't know the details. I do know that, Trump was coming after my husband back when Biden was president and Biden was running for the presidency, and I thought it was ironic. So, look, this is a fishing expedition, and I think what you're saying is that it's just been going on for a long time. My husband is Trump's most outspoken critic, and he's the GOP's biggest, I don't know. They've always targeted my husband.
She's talking in circles. She's absolutely clueless about the allegations, and she has no real solid defense other than, it's a witch hunt. They're always targeting my husband. Trump is always coming after us. I mentioned earlier that while Newsom has not been criminally charged with any crimes, federal prosecutors have indicted and gotten guilty pleas from several of his former top associates. Dana Williamson, former chief of staff, pleading guilty to felony charges of conspiracy to commit bank and wire fraud, filing false tax returns, lying to federal investigators. That was predating her time in Newsom's administration, but how much of it went on later? Now, if she's facing more jail time, she's going to be quick to roll over. And the former chief of staff to Xavier Becerra, pleading guilty to his role to siphon funds from a dormant campaign account. And federal investigators are examining the nonprofit tax activities of Newsom's wife. They have publicly stated they are targets of federal scrutiny. Neither so far subpoenaed, and they're not accused of wrongdoing. But they're taking a close look at them. And they want you to believe that all of this is political making, has nothing to do but that. They were not saying that when Trump was being pillared over and over again, nor his associates and family. Coming up, you're the mother of a 12-year-old, and you're told you cannot see his medical records.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
When insurance companies know you're represented by Onder Law, they know Onder is not going to let you be pushed around. Their reputation is built on years of courtroom battles. If you suffer an injury or damage to your property, serve the insurance company notice. You have Onder Law on your side, a St. Louis firm you can trust to protect you at every term. Don't settle for less. You want to win? Believe me, Onder wins. Onder, O-N-D-E-R, underlaw.com. McGuire Moving is silver certified, which means they are great at relocating senior citizens. In fact, McGuire is a household name because McGuire understands the stress involved when moving older adults. So if you or family members need help moving, I highly recommend McGuire Moving. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. Get a free in-home estimate. McGuireMoving.com. When I have business clients or guests from out of town, I often take them to Cafe Napoli. I know they're going to enjoy any of the Napoli locations. Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli 2 in Town and Country, Napoli 3 in St. Charles, next to Napoli C, Napoli Kirkwood, or Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the Chesterfield Valley. Excellent food and intellectual conversation, if they bring the intellectual conversation. And NapoliSTL.com. NapoliSTL.com. You should know that when I endorse Wellington Environmental, it's because I believe and know they will do you right. Wellington takes pride in providing homeowners and businesses whatever they need. You need some dustless blasting, they will take care of that. You need some mold remediation, they can do that. They take pride in training their team to perform multiple services and having the equipment ready to get jobs finished. That's important to you. You make just one call, and you call a company that's been around for more than 35 years with more than 45 technicians in the field. Most of you know finding good workers, then having them show up on time could be difficult. Not for Wellington Environmental. They're there at the designated time, ready to go. Check them out to see what they could do for you. Dustless blasting or anything else you need. Wellington Environmental, 314-644-4930. 314-644-4930. Be well with Wellington.
This is NewsTalk-STL.
Some other guy that you knew before. You do all those guys, you know I love you more. Took me by surprise, I must say, when I found out yesterday. Ooh, I paid it to the grapevine.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Can you
wait?
Hold on.
Say that again.
Wait, I'm like, can you? Okay, hold on. Let me understand this. So, while he's 11, I'll have access to his medical records. But once he turns 12, the government locks me out.
Yes, because there's the I'm sure you've heard of HIPAA.
Yeah,
so
of course.
He now has privacy rights under HIPAA once he's 12.
So as a parent, I can't see my 12-year-old's medical records?
No.
What? I thought it was 14. I've heard.
Okay, so it's crazy, and I'm not saying that, like, I'm the bearer of bad news. Please don't get me.
She is a bearer of bad news. That's a mother in California with her son's doctor, or his doctor's office anyway, trying to inquire about something with her son's health. 14 years old. 12 years old. I don't think it should be cut off even at 14. A parent is a parent until that child is emancipated by the age of 18. Yeah, if the child's emaciated, they definitely need protection from the parent if that's what's going on. But she's just inquiring, trying to learn something else about her son's health. But he is now 12 years old, and in California, Governor Newsom and crowd have decided, no, that child is now old enough to protect his medical records. Riddle me this. Do you remember, can you think back to when you were 12? Was it that far along, that far back? Or do you have children or grandchildren that are 12 years old right now? Now, if you're not the custodian, parent, adoption, whatever situation, yeah, you cannot have access to them. But if you're the parent of that child, you should be entitled to know what's going on with them. You know where all this starts and where they want to see it continue? If a child is wanting to undergo transgender surgery, mutilation, or just transformation, goes to school dressed as a boy, changes in a locker room, comes out as a girl, and spends the entire day as a girl at school, changes their pronoun and everything. If they're at age 12, then that might be talked to a doctor, a psychiatrist, or whatever, or a surgeon. And the parent is not even entitled to know what's going on with their child. 12 years of age. If you say this is out of kilter, completely off the rocks and everything, you're absolutely right. But it began with the effort to inject our children with the philosophy that it's okay to destroy your body if you don't feel comfortable in it, and it will be better. It's not going to be better. Children that undergo transsexual surgery, much less other kinds of puberty blockers, they're basically going to be on drugs the rest of their lives. And when a 12-year-old suddenly decides at 17, I don't like this life. But, of course, the argument from the other side is if you don't let your child do what they need to be doing because that's what they want, then you're hurting them. Your job as a parent is not to be a friend to your child. I'd like to be, but my first job is a parent, a guardian. But they get in the minds of these kids, 8, 9, 10, and begin to push them in that direction. So then they know that by the age in California, if you're going to the doctor and you're talking to the doctor about you don't feel comfortable in your body, that maybe you want to undergo sex change or puberty blockers, they will more than likely follow the child's wishes and never tell the parents because it's protected by HIPAA. It always amazes me, by the way, reference HIPAA. Say I go into a doctor's office. Could be any doctor. Doesn't have to be anybody of specialty, or it could be. But I had to list my name, and then they call my name out to take me back to the room. Give me a number. Maybe I didn't want everyone in there to know who I was. Then they began to speculate why I'm there. If you notice, often when you sign the ledger, once they take the ledger, they write down the name, then they cross the name out. But they still come out in the room and say, Larry? Well, I guess probably a lot of folks might know who I am anyway, but what if I didn't want that? And I've always had an issue with Child Protective Services that withhold information that could protect a child. They have, in some cases, constantly ignored warnings from school officials, even others in the family, that the child might be endangered at home in some fashion or another. And you can't get anything out of Child Protective Services because they say, we cannot discuss the juvenile situation. And then the child ends up dead. And the reason they were not giving you the information earlier is because they're saying, we're trying to protect the child. But the child ends up dead at the hands of the parent or stepfather or whoever it might be. You did not protect the child. And yet they all run around trying to cover their arses again because they did not handle the case properly to truly protect the child. I fear that's what's happening right now in California. You can tell the nurse assistant, or whatever her position was with the doctor's office. Maybe it was the doctor herself speaking to the mother, I'm not sure. But basically saying, don't blame me, I'm just the bearer of the bad news. But in California, if your child turns 12, as a parent or legal guardian, you no longer have the right to know what kind of medical treatment they're getting or not getting. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah, we know that, don't we? In the meantime, moving toward the election, and the SAVE Act still needs to be passed and pushed through. And former CIA Director Ratcliffe knows that as well. But we also want to see accountability for those who have been in power before and failed us. Perhaps holding former FBI Director Comey and others accountable. Maria Bartiromo raised that question for CIA Director Ratcliffe.
So what I think I hear you saying is there is still an opportunity for indictments, potential prosecutions, accountability from those people who may have lied under oath, like John Brennan, James Comey, and perhaps Hillary Clinton.
Well, that's why I've made the referrals that I have. DNI Gabbard has made referrals, and why we're going to continue to share the intelligence that would support the ability of our Department of Justice to make bring fair and just claims against those who have perpetrated this hoax against the American people and this stain on our country.
That's great. We should. We should do that. And by the way, Housing Department is suspending the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority from any federal funding over fraud and mismanagement alleged during hurricane relief. They say it is the Minnesota of the Caribbean. So the Trump administration is currently freezing all funds to help rebuild the Virgin Islands. I've been in the Virgin Islands numerous times. Beautiful place. And after they've suffered the hurricanes they have, I know they need help and aid. But the problem is every time there's a legitimate issue on the table to help people, here they come. Here come the grifters, the scammers. What can we get out of it? What can we take of federal dollars, just like they've done in Minnesota? Fox was talking to a Democrat representing Virginia, I think it is, also a Democrat Virgin Islands governor, asking for additional comment. Actually, this might be a Democrat representing the Virgin Isles. HUD claims it spent nearly $2 billion to help the Virgin Islands after they were hit by Hurricane Irma and then Maria, all in 2017. Devastation widespread. I know some folks who have been back, and a lot of the vegetation, it grows quickly in that part of the world and it has replaced a lot of the vegetation, but a lot of the people lost what they had. But back in March, the chief operating officer for the Virgin Islands funding was convicted and sentenced to 3 years in prison. Bank fraud, money laundering, false statements, criminal conflict of interest. Like getting $107,000 for a contractor to help make the Virgin Islands better. And they claim the contract was later inflated by 50%. And that much of the lumber was then left to rot in the tropical sun. I'm telling you, every time there's an earthquake and where you really want to give help, and the people that are truly in need, they don't get it because the grifters come in. And they start looking at how we can make money in the process. Apparently, none of the 330 housing work migration projects have been finished in all this time. And yet, $52 million was spent on administration cost. All of these auditings are showing that the money has been used, misused, abused, and now HUD is saying we're shutting it down until we get a closer look at what's going on. And telling the Virgin Island administration you have 30 days to request a hearing and prove something that validates what you've done. All this coming from the massive Feeding Our Future prosecution we've seen in Minnesota. and now the Virgin Islands. By the way, South Carolina Republican Ralph Norman says he will run for the late Senator Graham's seat to represent the people of South Carolina. Now, of course, he's doing that after the governor had appointed Lindsey Graham's sister to serve out his term, and then she recently announced that she wants to run for his office. She said, "I'll stand with President Trump and carry on Lindsey Graham's legacy." Norman expresses the same, saying, "I want to get the Save America Act passed, but it's official, I'm now running." Trump had already given his support to Lindsey's sister. His complete and total endorsement was the wording. We'll see if that's going to change or not. Told you earlier today that we've had 2 more American members of our troops killed in Iran, in the Gulf states, hit by Iran target, missiles, drones, in one case in Kuwait, hitting an air base in Jordan also last week. And they now are releasing names of these 2, the first killed since we restarted the hostilities because Iran started violating the so-called peace agreement. A third service member's remains being identified. Trump writing today on Truth Social, every time an Iran missile or rocket kills an American soldier, they will pay for that killing many times over. Since the war began, we've had 17 killed. The latest 2, First Lieutenant Tyler James Feehan, 25 years of age, of Hawaii. 19-year-old Private Isabella Gonzalez, Carrollton, Texas. Isabella, young woman, obviously decided she wanted to serve our nation, and she signed up to serve our nation. And now she's made the ultimate sacrifice in service to her nation, as did First Lieutenant Feehan. I'm afraid there will be more, because Iran is determined on destroying anything it can't control. And we will have to fire back on Iran over and over, and that means more civilian casualties than we want. But we're not going to put any boots on the ground. We might use the Gulf states to do that if that becomes necessary. Again, reminding you, on this date, 1969, Neil Armstrong, the first man to walk on the moon. Join us again tomorrow. And remember our pledge, one nation under God.